to Inside Tomorrow, the show which is here to uncover innovative technologies and trends, to explain how these technologies work and how they can help us build a circular economy. My name is Yelena Ganzov-Vandarmesh, and I'm a producer and host of Inside Tomorrow, and we're live from the studio of Dukoscopy TV here in Geneva. And a special guest on the show today, he's the Director of Circular Economy for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Brendan Edgerton. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, appreciate it.
Brendan, now with many technologies arriving here and disrupting our life, these technologies, are they contributing or they disrupting our mission in building a circular economy?
It's a great question, and unfortunately there's no simple answer to this, but there is a simple logic to follow in order to think about how to move products towards more circularity. And today the economy is only 8.6% circular, so we have a long way to go before we get to 80, 90,
so we're somewhere in the beginning of it.
We're in the beginning. Actually, we're kind of going backwards. Just a couple of years ago, we were about 9.1%. But in thinking about whether a product or these new technologies, whatever they are moving or helping us or inhibiting us from circularity, it comes down to a couple things. One, how are they designed and manufactured? How are they put out onto the market in terms of business models and sales? And then lastly, how are they being recovered? Are they being recovered after life? You can already design, and companies are already designing products so that they can be recovered, so that you can repair them, so that you can reuse them. The challenge is then you have to work with the infrastructure and partners along on the value chain to ensure that that actually is recoverable and that it actually is recovered. And so we've developed circular transition indicators. This is now the second version that we published earlier this year as a way to help companies measure the circularity of their products, their business units, or their company in understanding these things. Are they designed to be reused, recovered, or repaired? Are they using recycled content, sustainably harvested, bio-based content in their products? And then at the end of life, are they actually recovering them somehow, either through the infrastructure or through their closed-loop business model?
How do they actually measure what is inside those indicators?
So on the inflow side, let's say what's going into their products. Every company knows what they're buying. They're very purposeful about it. However, it's not always clear, how far up the chain where that's coming from and the sustainability properties of that. So increasingly so, they're setting targets around not only understanding what's going into these products, but asking their suppliers to provide this data. How much recycled content does it contain? Was this biomass that we're purchasing to put into our product, does that come from sustainably managed forests, for example? And they're able to quantify this based on all the mass that they put into a product to determine how much of that is circular on that side. And then on the design side, are they using adhesives that can be reversible? Are they using certain types of connectors that could actually be disassembled relatively easily and inexpensively and safely, for that matter, so that things could be repaired, remanufactured, and reused down the line.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about plastics, now many companies are making their goals to be plastic-free by 2030. Plastic arrived in our life like a storm, like a happy storm, I would say. We were all happy to use plastic disposable glasses, plastic gloves in hospitals, which help a lot right now in the times of pandemic. And then we all know the plastic bubble paper we all love to cover the furniture, our electronic equipment. How bad is plastic? Or what we have done with plastic is really a disaster.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to completely get rid of plastics?
Yeah, the perspective that I take is, plastic is kind of just the latest symptom of this virus that we have of a linear economy mindset.
Okay.
Yes, it is everywhere, and we do not know all of the human and ecological impacts of plastics that are anywhere from the bottom of the ocean to the top of mountains that they're finding now. However, it is this mindset that we have of linear consumption, of producing things to be used once and then to be disposed of after. And if we focus on solely plastics, we risk not seeing the larger picture that will essentially be playing whack-a-mole of different materials and products that are popping up, and not looking at instead, how can we change what we produce, how we consume, and ensure that whatever we consume at the end of the day is reintroduced back into the economy.
So that's the circularity.
Circular economy, exactly.
So speaking of electronics, as we love buying our electronic devices, computers, iPads, phones, now we have electric vehicles with their batteries, is there any global mission to recycle, reuse the electronics? Because it seems like it's very costly to recycle all of this waste.
It can be quite costly to recycle this, but there's also quite a bit of economic opportunity in doing that. We were talking a bit before about the challenges of different regulations and different criteria of how to work with local infrastructure that collects electronics. But because of this economic opportunity, there are quite a few companies that are stepping up and have recently joined the Circular Electronics Partnership. And this partnership is an alliance of 7 organizations, including WBCSD, World Economic Forum, Global Electronics Council, and others, to bring some of the biggest electronics companies in the world together today in order to align on definitions and criteria for circularity, to harmonize efforts in order to get to this vision of circularity that we all have faster and more effectively. And so, this was just launched earlier this year.
Okay.
We have about 20 companies that are now part of the initiative across the whole electronics value chain. The value of this type of initiative is recognized not only by the private sector, but increasingly by other stakeholders as they see this alliance of companies as a promising community to drive the
Is there
issue
any
forward.
specific companies that are more, let's say, volunteer and leading this line, this commitment?
Yeah, I think the companies, you'll see the companies that are part of the Circular Electronics Partnership that are involved. All of these companies are doing some fantastic things. By no means have we achieved what we want to achieve here. There's a long way to go. However, whether you're looking at disassembly robots or reverse logistics, high-tech AI-driven and robotic sorting technologies, these companies are each bringing pretty fantastic solutions to the table. Our job now is to work beyond a company's 4 walls and to see how we can, in a pre-competitive space, scale a lot of these technologies and solutions up so that it's not up to just one company to bring all of this back, but we could be more effectively.
Can you give us an
together.
example of certain solutions that they're bringing to the table now?
One solution that's particularly interesting is looking at artificial intelligence in sorting technology. So you think about all of the electronic products coming back. There are many different materials in those products, plastics, metals, etc. And what new sorting technology is offering is understanding shapes, based on the shapes, the mass, the volumes of different products in a very quick and rapid way down a assembly belt, is to understand what those products are, their material categories and characteristics, and being able to separate them.
So disassemble, basically.
Yeah, so yeah,
the
to
small parts.
disaggregate different materials based on their properties. And ultimately what that leads to is higher value material on the other end, because it's not contaminated or mixed. You have a relatively concentrated and similar type of material.
Okay, so we're building AI, working in this mission.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And other technologies using Internet of Things to actually locate where different assets are. One example is a company called Hello Tractor, which does this with actual tractors in rural communities not everyone's able to afford one of those very expensive pieces of equipment, and most of the time they're idle. And so if we can, through a sharing platform, help others in that area know where those tractors are, then they're able to use them much more effectively and more often, but also share the cost and burden of owning one of those.
Do you think that in the upcoming future, the government will use some kind of a green certificate or impose green certificate or green tax on organizations and companies?
It's in some places it's headed that way. It kind of depends on what markets you operate in and where you're selling into. Where I'm from in the U.S., coming up with something like that is probably years out, if ever possible. However, what we're seeing here in Europe through the Green Deal and its Circular Economy Action Plan is a number of elements to try and get more clarity and consistency in how companies qualify sustainable and circular products. So just coming out this year, there should be a number of regulations and policies that help to drive that consistency, so consumers have a little more sharper understanding of what they're buying and whether that it does qualify as sustainable or not.
So the bottom line here is that with these green certificates and other technologies helping to build the circular economy, that means there are more opportunities for investors, for new jobs in these areas, especially in artificial intelligence, learning how to separate supply chains, learning how to supply different devices,
right,
and how to recycle.
Yes, there's going to be a shift in jobs. There's going to be some jobs that probably go away, and there's going to be other jobs that are created. And I think the important thing is that we facilitate a just transition, that we're able to understand which industries and employees may be at risk in moving towards more circularity, and upskill them and train them to make sure that they'll be prepared for that eventual transition. And this is almost entirely a national level conversation. Governments need to understand as this transition happens, we move away from dependence on limitless extraction, volume-based revenue models, and disposing of waste as if there's no impact. There's going to be changes to economies and industries at the national level, and we need to make sure that people within those economies are prepared.
So do you think that there will be, even in our educational systems, new majors, I don't know, new professions? Oh, I'm working in circular economy.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at in academia now, circular economy is infiltrating not only environmental master's degrees and bachelor's degrees, but into finance, into engineering, and whether it's kind of some of the subset thinking of industrial ecology or biomimicry, two elements of circularity. We're starting to see this not only be offered in universities more often, but demanded by students more and more, and looking to have this alternative type of thinking brought into their otherwise conventional curriculum.
Yeah, I think that the younger generation particularly is very, very keen in this respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the idea behind it is that at the core of it, circular economy is based on the principle of there is no waste in nature, so why should there be in society and the economy? And if nature is using one organism's waste as an input for another, we should be doing the same thing within industry, within companies, and within governments. And so how can we go back to the future kind of pre-industrial development, before things were artificially cheap and we were producing things as fast as we can, as quickly as much as we can, and get that out at low cost as we can, to thinking about how we embed more quality, durability, sustainability into the products that we often did before things were relatively cheap after the Industrial Revolution.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights, and we will continue our discussion at Inside Tomorrow on the circular economy, on the green shift, and how technologies can help us in this shift. My name is Yelena Ganzov-Londarmiash. I'm a producer and host of Inside Tomorrow, so stay tuned to our future episodes Up Inside tomorrow with Dukas Coffee TV.